his emotions in check. So today's reading, we continue where we left off last Sunday. Just a reminder what we heard last Sunday, that this treasure of the gospel we possess in earthen vessels. Remember earthen vessels we talked about last week. We possess this in earthen vessels to make clear that the surpassing power comes from God and not from us. And then Paul went on to say, we are afflicted in every way possible, but we are not crushed. We are full of doubts, but we never despair. We are persecuted, but never abandoned. We are struck down, but never destroyed. Throughout his argument in this letter, Paul consistently reminds the Corinthians that God is at work in him and in them by saying things like, we carry about in our bodies the death of Jesus, so that in our bodies the life of Jesus may be revealed. And we know that the one who raised Jesus to life in turn will raise us with him and place us in God's presence. Therefore, he says, we do not lose heart. Though this physical self of ours may be falling into decay, the inner self is being renewed day by day. What he's trying to do is help people understand that God is present and at work in us, and this is reason for hope. Therefore, we do not give in to discouragement or do not lose heart. Paul's emphasis on Christ at work in us got me thinking about how we locate God. Like, where is God? People have been wrestling with this question, of course, since we first, began to have any kind of concept of God or divinity. How we answer the question, though, of the point of contact between God and human being has huge implications for our understanding of the joys and difficulties of life and of faith. Some people believe that that point of contact is located inside of us, while others see that point of contact as truly beyond us. On the one hand, some people believe that there are, quote, echoes of Eden still inside our heart and soul and mind, while others argue that God is nothing like us, but is instead distant and ultimately the other. If one understands the divine to be at work inside of us, renewing us daily, it is a source of tremendous strength and resilience in the face of personal and collective difficulties. It provides for a sense of spiritual agency. It does not mean that we won't experience challenges. It means that we can draw on the strength and love of the divine within us to meet those challenges. And it also means that when we suffer, the divine suffers with us. If one understands God or the divine to be outside of us, to be the ultimate other, this too has implications for how we meet the joys and challenges of life and of faith. It really affects our sense of spiritual agency, I think, because it means that we are put into a position where we must ask the divine to act or intervene from outside of us. But it also means that there is an ultimate source of love, a higher power, which is greater than we can imagine, and from whom we can draw strength and compassion. Paul suggests, amidst the difficulties of life and of ministry, we can take comfort that the resurrected Christ lives inside of us. Paul locates the, quote, point of contact at first inside rather than outside of us. He says, Though this physical self of ours may be falling into decay, some of us are a little more decayed than others. But he says, you know, that inner self, it's being renewed day by day. One person who was interested in where people locate God was a Benedictine monk named B.D. Griffiths, who traveled around the world and spent a lot of time in India, in ashrams in India. And on his travels around the world, he asked various people of faith, different faith traditions, where is God? Hindus and Buddhists in the East, he discovered, would typically point to their heart, while Jews and Christians and Muslims in the West would point outside of themselves to the heavens. So it got me thinking, maybe we can just reflect for a few moments on some questions about where is God located. So we're just gonna think in your mind, I'm gonna put out some questions. Where do you think or feel God is located? So in other words, where do you believe the intersection occurs, or the point of contact occurs between God and your own life? Is God inside of you, outside of you, up, down, all around? Where is God when you're faced with a serious illness? Where is God when you can't pay your rent or buy food? Where is God when one of your ministers leaves? Where is God in the face of the climate disaster? Where is God when the future feels scary and uncertain? Where is God when your beloved pet dies and crosses that rainbow bridge? First, locating the divine within us, Paul said that our inner nature is being renewed. This renewal will eventually end, he says, when the earthly tent that we live in is destroyed. Paul's point is that at some point, of course, we will all die, that in time, everything human will crumble and perish, whether it is a civilization, a city, a home, or our own life. In the face of our death and the struggles of life and ministry, Paul then steers his readers, shifts some of the language, and steers his reader to the hope found in what he calls eternal things. What does he mean? Well, like an inner nature grounded in the resurrected Christ, there also exists, says Paul, divinity outside of us, another reality to restore us, but one not easily seen. So we might say that if B.D. Griffiths had happened to meet Paul and asked the question, where is God? Paul might have pointed at first to his heart, and then with the other hand to the world, sky above. In reflecting on this question, where is God? I came across a story that I think Paul might have liked. It's a story about a disciple and his teacher. Where shall I find God? A disciple once asked. Here, the teacher said. Then why can't I see God? Because you do not look. But what should I look for? The disciple continued. Nothing, just look, the teacher said. But at what? Ah, anything your eyes light upon, the teacher said. But must I look in a special kind of way? At this point, teacher's getting pretty irritated, but anyway, teacher says, no, the ordinary way will do. But don't I always look in the ordinary way? No, you don't, the teacher said. But why ever not? The disciple pressed. Because to look, you must be here. You are mostly somewhere else, the teacher said. Paul's letter invites us to consider, I think, where we locate God, at work inside of us or outside of us. And as the teacher in this story suggests, to perceive where God is, have to be present in body, mind, and spirit. Ultimately, perhaps Paul would have said that both perspectives are correct, that God's presence is both internal and external, present as the resurrected Christ, renewing us from inside out, but also present as God, source of love, from whom we can draw strength and compassion in this life and in the next. Praise and thanks be to God. Amen. We pause for a moment of reflection.